continues.
We want to welcome to our table Resident Commissioner of Puerto Rico, Pedro Pierluisi. Good morning. Thank you for being here, for talking to our viewers. Let's talk about the debt situation.
Good morning, Greta.
$72 billion. Why?
That's the total debt that public entities in Puerto Rico have in the markets, in the financial markets. And it accumulated in decades for various reasons. Part of it, actually, is the fact that Puerto Rico doesn't get the same level of federal assistance as the states do. Part of it is mismanagement, bad decisions, in the sense that some of the debt has to do with operating deficits of the central government that were financed. And you shouldn't do that. You should live within your means. But the first thing that I should say is that it's not one debt. This is not like one sovereign debt. Puerto Rico is an American territory. And again, there are debts from, let's say, the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority. It's one of the entities. Puerto Rico Water and Sewer Authority. It's another one. And you have the central government of Puerto Rico, called the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, that has issued general obligation bonds. And our Constitution protects those bonds. Pretty much gives them first priority in terms of paying them. So that's the macro. That's the broad picture.
Can Puerto Rico pay it?
Yes. The debt is payable. It is definitely manageable at the central government level. There are some entities, like the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, PREPA we call it, that are having difficulty in meeting their payment obligations. That entity has already a forbearance agreement with its major creditors dating back about a year. So that's an entity that definitely it needs to restructure its operations as well as its obligations to make sure that it fulfill its obligations.
You have introduced legislation to allow Puerto Rico to file bankruptcy. There is this headline, though, from yesterday: Congress won't grant Puerto Rico bankruptcy protection.
Well, the first thing that I should say that what I'm asking for in my bill, and there's a counterpart bill in the Senate, is that Puerto Rico be given exactly the same treatment as the states get in terms of bankruptcy. We're not talking about the central government of Puerto Rico declaring bankruptcy. That's not available to the states, so it wouldn't be available to Puerto Rico. But it could allow, if the bill is passed, then entities like PREPA, the Power Authority, or the Water and Sewer Authority could reorganize themselves before the bankruptcy court, the federal bankruptcy court. That's a mechanism that is available in the states. Cities, utilities have used it. So to reorganize themselves in a proper, legal, safe manner. That's what I want for Puerto Rico. It makes sense to have it, and I hope that when the time comes, Congress will approve the bill.
What does Puerto Rico not get that states get? You said the island does not have as many, does not get as much federal assistance that states get.
Lots of areas. One that comes to mind immediately is health programs. For example, there are huge disparities in the way Puerto Rico is treated under the Medicaid program. That's the program that is available to provide access to medical care to medically indigent people, citizens throughout the nation. In Puerto Rico, we get half of the funding, even less than we would get as a state. And that brings a lot of fiscal pressure to our local government. We have a health insurance card program in Puerto Rico, and the federal government is basically paying less than half its cost, and we're not covering people even up to 100% of poverty level. So it's a very different environment to operate in. The Medicare program, this is really amazing. In Puerto Rico, we don't pay federal income taxes on our local income, but we pay payroll taxes. I mean Social Security and Medicare. Yet, there are huge disparities in the way the Medicare program applies in Puerto Rico. It is the only place where, for Subpart B of Medicare, that's the part of the coverage that deals with outpatient services, we don't get it automatically in Puerto Rico. Hospitals in Puerto Rico do not get the same payments hospitals in the mainland get, and they offer the same level of care. And doctors in Puerto Rico get discriminated. The reimbursement rates that CMS, which is the entity administrating the Medicare program pays in Puerto Rico are a lot lower than in the States. So that affects the health sector in Puerto Rico. There are other programs in which we do not get the same deal. Supplemental security income. People with disabilities in Puerto Rico are not eligible to participate in that program. Tax credits, the earned income tax credit in the States, which promotes people to go into the labor force, basically incentivizes people to work. Even though Puerto Rico has a very low labor participation rate, we don't get that benefit. And I can go on and on. It is unfair. I mean, we are 3.5 million American citizens residing in Puerto Rico. Why treat us differently? It makes no sense. It's un-American. And I haven't even talked about political rights we don't have also. So just simply giving us parity, equal treatment in federal programs makes sense. It's like geographic discrimination. You move to Puerto Rico tomorrow and you lose all kinds of rights. And you're an American citizen. You were not born in Puerto Rico, not that that makes a difference. And yet you would move tomorrow there and you're not going to get the same treatment from your government, the federal government. It frankly makes no sense.
And you're right, in the Huffington Post piece recently, for Puerto Rico, prosperity requires equality. For Puerto Rico to thrive, these benefits are needed, you argue.
But of course, because you're talking about quality of life, you're talking about resources that the government in Puerto Rico would have, that right now we're using our own resources to provide decent care to American citizens living in Puerto Rico. Why not the federal government? It is doing it elsewhere in the nation. And that's why I do believe that the permanent solution to the problems facing Puerto Rico is to treat the American citizens in Puerto Rico with equality, equal rights for the American citizens in Puerto Rico.
What you asking for, is it really what you're asking for is statehood? You're running for governor.
I am running for governor, and I am advocating for statehood. Actually, the people of Puerto Rico held a plebiscite in Puerto Rico, and statehood got more votes than any other status option. And the people rejected the current territorial status. What's democracy? Democracy is basically the people choosing their leaders, their elected officials, and the people deciding their political future. It's otherwise called self-determination. Well, in Puerto Rico, we already spoke, and I have a bill pending before Congress that basically provides for an up or down vote on statehood, the same vote that Hawaii and Alaska had before they became states of the Union, and then the admission process in about a 4-year period. It is a straightforward bill, and it's something, as I say, that's the permanent solution. On an immediate basis, we have to make sure in Puerto Rico that we have fiscal responsibility, that we balance our budget, that we change our budgetary system so we make sure that we're not overspending. And then at the same time, we want tools to deal with this excessive amount of debt that some entities have piled up in Puerto Rico, the same way that it happens in the States. Here in the States, when a city, a county, or let's say a water and sewer authority gets into financial trouble, it reorganizes itself. The same happens in the private sector. Chapter 11 of the Bankruptcy Code, which is available in Puerto Rico. That's what happens when any corporation gets in financial trouble. You reinvent yourself, you reorganize yourself. It's part of the American capital system, and it should be available in Puerto Rico.
We're talking with Pedro Pierluisi. He's the resident commissioner of Puerto Rico, first elected in 2008. Let's get to calls. By the way, fourth line set aside for Puerto Ricans this morning. You can dial in at 202-748-8003. Christy in Charlotte, North Carolina, a Democrat. You're up first. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. My question is, why is unemployment so high in Puerto Rico, and why is so many people on disability in Puerto Rico?
Great question. Actually, our economy has been lagging when you compare it to the economy in the States. Our income per capita is about 1/3 of the state average. And the same applies to unemployment. We've always had 4 or 5% percentage points more higher unemployment than in the mainland. We're lagging. This status that we have is not performing well anymore. It doesn't work as a platform for Puerto Rico's economic development. We need to change the status. And when you ask the people of Puerto Rico, American citizens, what do they prefer? Do they prefer joining the Union, or going our own way and then becoming a sovereign country in association with the U.S., some kind of a treaty with the U.S.? The overwhelming majority will say they'd rather join the Union on an equal footing, equal basis with their fellow American citizens. So a lot has to do with the fact that this status is not working anymore. The debt we pile, the unemployment we have, the lack of good jobs we have is happening as a territory, and we should focus on that.
This is some statistics put together on Puerto Rico, and it says about employment that the single most telling statistic in Puerto Rico is that only 40% of the adult population versus 63% in the mainland is employed or looking for work. Employers decline to hire workers because the U.S. federal minimum wage is very high relative to the local average. And it says in a more binding constraint on unemployment is that in Puerto Rico earn $8.50 or less versus only 3% on the mainland, and local regulations pertaining to overtime, paid vacation, dismissal are costly and more onerous than on the mainland.
Yeah. The disability rate in Puerto Rico might be higher, but it's basically a reality. I mean, people, when they have disabilities, they seek assistance. And they do, in the case of Puerto Ricans or American citizens of Puerto Rico, they go to the Social Security office and they file claims to get assistance. But as I said before, the Supplemental Security Income Program doesn't apply in Puerto Rico, so we are disadvantaged. In terms of the 40% low labor participation rate, in the mainland, the average is 60%. So Puerto Rico is 20% lower. And there are all kinds of reasons for this. Again, good jobs, lack of good jobs and opportunities in Puerto Rico under the current status. I believe that's the main reason. You also have the fact that you do have a lot of population under the poverty level. And that brings incredible challenges. Some of them are receiving assistance from the federal government, nutrition assistance. It could be housing assistance, Section 8, public housing. And to that extent, it could be that some of those programs do not incentivize work. Now, I am the first one who says the solution cannot be that Puerto Rico then not have the federal minimum wage. That's not the solution. In Puerto Rico, you want decent wages. You want people who get a job to basically you want to make sure that the salary they earn allows them to meet their basic necessities. Puerto Rico is part of the U.S. and the fact that we get the federal minimum wage is a positive. You want our labor force to be productive, to be well motivated, and to be able to have a decent quality of life. So that's not the solution, to reduce the minimum wage in Puerto Rico. The solution is to assist Puerto Rico. And we can assist Puerto Rico giving it a better treatment in federal programs. And again, I'll repeat, in actually treating American citizens there equally, allowing Puerto Rico to become a state of the union.
This report notes that workers are disinclined to take jobs because the welfare system provides generous benefits in Puerto Rico that often exceed what minimum wage employment yields. Let's go to Saul in Dallas, Texas, a Republican. You're next. Go ahead.
Hi. Good morning. First of all, congrats on your program. I would like to tell the commissioner that the first thing that he calls my attention, when he started talking, he said about the benefits of the welfare or the programs that Puerto Rico doesn't get from the mainland, from the government. I think that's a wrong view, and that's a lot of the problems that Puerto Rico has. The 40% unemployment is not really that it's unemployment. It's because people get more money from welfare than to go out there and get a job. So with that to wait for the federal government to bail us out. We don't want that. Jeb Bush said yesterday that Puerto Rico has to solve its problem with $72 billion problem before talking about changing the status of the island.
Okay.
I mean,
We'll get a response.
Okay, nobody's talking about a bailout. Nobody's asking for that. We simply want the same treatment as the states get. The federal programs you're referring to are federal. It is Congress the one who set them up. And in the case of Puerto Rico, it makes no sense to reduce the minimum wage, because if anything, then that's going to give them a bigger incentive not to work. Because if what they're going to be getting paid is even less, a lot less than the value of the benefits they get if they're not working and they're having difficulty, you cannot blame them. Then they wouldn't work. They would rather receive the assistance that they'll need to survive. So it is not right to say that we're advocating for more welfare benefits. That's not it. We're advocating for the same treatment, the equality. Puerto Rico is part of the U.S. People sometimes forget up here that we're American citizens. And so we should be treated with respect, more than ever. Equality. Now everybody wants equality all over the world. Why not for the American citizens living in Puerto Rico?
We'll hear from Allie next in California, an independent.
Hello?
Good morning, you're on the air.
Yes, I just have a few questions. I will ask them, and then I'll hang up and let him answer. The last 10 years, I was just wondering how many military bases have been shut down there, and that could probably cause a big problem with employment. And then do you also get Obamacare? And if you don't, you're very lucky. And are you regulated by the same EPA rules that we are here? And if not, can you get somebody to help build your industry? And then you got to be careful with the minimum wage, because that will go up, and then everybody's rent will also go up. So anyway, if you could just ask those questions. Thank you.
All right, Allie.
Okay, about 12, 13 years ago, a major Navy base was closed and shut down in Puerto Rico. It was located in Ceiba. It was called Roosevelt Roads. And that base was used because in Vieques, a neighboring island part of Puerto Rico, the Navy did military exercises, shelled Vieques for decades. And it was too much already. There had even been loss of life. So the Navy got out. We do not have any other base except Fort Buchanan, which is for the retired military service and so on. It's not an active military base as such. But our people, the American citizens of Puerto Rico per capita, joined the armed forces as much, if not higher, than most states. And we have been defending this country consistently in all world wars in the past century, as well as in Afghanistan, Iraq, and so on, wherever it's needed. And our veterans, of all people, they deserve equal treatment. They don't get it in Puerto Rico. They cannot vote for their commander-in-chief. They do not have congressional representation with a vote in both the House and the Senate up here, and they don't get the same benefits in Puerto Rico as they would get if they were living in the mainland. EPA rules and federal law in general applies in Puerto Rico. Banking laws, environmental laws, and so on. And we want that. We want that security. Again, we're proud Puerto Ricans, but we're also proud American citizens, and we believe in the democracy and the economic system of this nation.
Sardo, Largo, Florida, Democrat. You're on the air. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Mr. Pedro.
Good morning.
My question to you is, you say that you are an American. You say that you're taking all the benefits that we give you, and we're giving you plenty of benefits, because I am a landlord, and I rent a lot of homes to Puerto Ricans via housing authority. My biggest question to you is, why don't you become a state? Why do you take everything from the U.S., but yet you are not a state? So therefore, we should cut off everything that goes to Puerto Rico. Señor, buenos dias. Ciao.
Well, I like your attitude. That's what I'm all about. My quest in life is to change the status of Puerto Rico, make it the 51st state of the Union. That makes sense. That makes sense, and that's what I'm fighting for. The bill that I have pending before Congress calls for an up or down vote on the admission of Puerto Rico as a state, the same vote that Hawaii and Alaska had before they joined the Union. Everybody for can vote for, anybody against can vote against it, and it's very democratic. And then Congress would admit Puerto Rico under the same terms and conditions that it admitted other states. We're not asking for better treatment. We're asking for the same, for equal treatment for Puerto Rico. Now, remember one thing. You mentioned that we get all these benefits. We don't get them all, by the way. And as you know, in the U.S., lots of people do not pay federal income taxes and get benefits from the federal government. So the same should happen in Puerto Rico. Again, we're American citizens. We should be treated fairly in our country.
In April, Republican presidential frontrunner Jeb Bush endorsed statehood for Puerto Rico. Do you know where the votes are for your legislation in the House? Have you done a whip count?
Yes. The bill I have introduced has already over 110 co-sponsors. It has more co-sponsors than 99% of the bills pending before the House, and it is bipartisan support. I have more than, I believe it's 13, 14 Republican members joining me, even though I'm a proud Democrat, because they believe that this is the right thing to do. Have a vote in Puerto Rico, a democratic vote, and then assuming a majority of the people want to join the Union, then provide for the admission. So this is a quest. It's not going to happen overnight. As I said, we held a plebiscite in 2012 in Puerto Rico. The current status was clearly rejected. 54% of the people rejected the current status, and statehood got more votes than all the other options, and including the current status. So if anything is clear now, is that the people of Puerto Rico are not satisfied with the territorial status we have. One change, and statehood is the answer.
And the Washington Post noted recently, exodus from Puerto Rico could sway the presidential election. U.S. citizens seeking work also get a vote, many in the pivotal state of Florida. Joseph, in Rio Grande, Puerto Rico, Republican, go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Congressman Pierluisi. This is Mr. Joseph Colon. I'm calling just because to say that I'm a proud American citizen that defended our great nation for 20 years. And I'm also a proud Puerto Rican. The only question that I have for Congressman Pierluisi concerning the crisis, I don't understand why in Puerto Rico we have 78 mayors for 3.5 residents that live in Puerto Rico, and why no political personnel has made the adjustments needed to fix this crisis. Thank you.
Actually, Joseph, we do have 78 municipalities, but we have no counties. And we shouldn't have counties in Puerto Rico, given that we have so many municipalities. What we have to do at the municipality level, the city level, is to make sure that small cities use resources from bigger cities, that we do not have as much bureaucracy in each and every one of those municipalities. And that's something that we need to do looking forward. Definitely, we have the size of our government, both the central government and the municipal governments in Puerto Rico, is too large for the size of our economy. We need to grow our economy, grow our private sector, and make sure that our government does not keep growing. We have to use technology and make sure that we do not have as much bureaucracy as we have right now. But the answer would be to streamline the governments at a lot of those municipalities you're referring to. It wouldn't be, though, to start creating counties or other governmental structures in Puerto Rico. That would be even more expensive for the government and more bureaucratic.
Let's go to Jose, also in Puerto Rico, a Republican. You're on the air.
Greetings, Mr. Pedro. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
My question here is that I've been hearing about that the people of Puerto Rico have a lot of independence and welfare or government assistance. But what it is that we have a moral responsibility with our elderly people and our kids. I'm a serviceman. My folks have been a service member from Vietnam was in liberation of Kuwait. And we all have served, and we have a passion for our nation, and we serve with pride. And we have sometimes seen that we got treated like second-class citizens. Not only that, I've been told sometimes that I'm from another country, and I tell them about my military service, and I said, I am not a mercenary. If I go to combat and I put my life in the line, it's because I love this country, because I believe what is liberty and justice for all. And not only I, all people do that. We are people of noble nobility in the sense that we go for what is right, and with deep roots of moral and so on, like that. And we acting that we have over 120 years under the flag of the United States. We're American citizens, and we want statehood. We want an opportunity to develop ourselves, like Hawaii has done, like other countries, and we can do it with the tourists. We have the tourist industry. It's something that we have the way path or the level field, and we can do it.
Okay, Jose, I'm gonna have our guests respond, but before we do that, how are you watching us this morning in Puerto Rico?
I'm watching my TV. I'm TV.
Cable.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Cable TV. Jose summarized it. I mean, we're proud Puerto Ricans and proud American citizens. You can call us Puerto Rican Americans. 9 out of 10 Puerto Ricans are very proud of their American citizenship, and they don't want anybody to mess with it. At the same time, we have issues like the aging of the population. The same thing is happening in a lot of other places. And we're losing population. You mentioned it, Greta, before. Why are we losing population? Because when you're an American citizen living in Puerto Rico and you cannot find a good job, or you do not get the level of health care that you want, or you're not being treated fairly by your government, the U.S. government, you can quickly hop on a plane and move to the States and go to Florida, go to Texas, go to Connecticut, anywhere in the States. And all of a sudden, overnight, you get rights and opportunities you don't have in Puerto Rico. That's why I say this makes no sense. When Jose mentioned that some people here sometimes confuse Puerto Rico, let's say, with Costa Rica or other countries and think that we're like a foreign country, it is an ongoing education process. We need to remind people, including leaders in the U.S., that Puerto Rico is part of the U.S. and that we are American citizens. And you cannot ignore us. You cannot, because we're part of this country. And you should, when Puerto Rico prospers, America prospers. When Puerto Rico does well, America does well. And we're in the midst of the Caribbean where lots of things are happening. We should be a bridge between the U.S. and Latin America, Central America, the Caribbean, and more so than we currently are. So let's have a vision. Let's have a common vision. Let's make sure that we put Puerto Rico on a path to equality, on a path to real progress.
Pedro Pierluisi, representing the territory of Puerto Rico, 3.5 million people. No other member of Congress represents that many people. We'll go next to Mary in Wheeling, West Virginia, independent. Hi, Mary.
Hi, how you doing? I was just going to make a comment that right now you don't pay federal income tax, and as you point out, you do receive benefits such as Social Security disability, food stamps, housing supplements, medical assistance on some levels, for which you're putting in nothing. So first of all, if you can't make it when you're not paying any federal income tax, how do you think you're going to be able to balance your budget when you start paying federal income tax? And secondly, under what circumstance would the other 50 states want to take on your debt when we can't pay the debt we have right now? And thirdly, you have an advantage situation. You're allowed to put out your bonds have been not taxable in all 50 states. So you actually have a unique situation where your bonds have become more valuable in other states. No other state can do that. Everybody else is triple tax-free only in their own state.
Okay. Good questions. First, in the mainland, close to half of the households do not owe federal income taxes because of their income levels. So you have a lot of people in the mainland getting benefits from the federal government and not paying anything for them. We do pay Social Security and we pay for Medicare. And as I said before, we don't get the same deal as our fellow citizens in the States. And with respect to triple tax exemption for our bonds, that is an incentive that Puerto Rico was given. Maybe it ignited a lot of the borrowing and demand for our bonds, and that's a question. But it was given the same as the federal tax treatment we get, because we're not getting the same assistance in federal programs we would get as a state. So that's why we need to change the model, change the platform, change the status. It is not working anymore.
Dennis is next. Windermere, Florida, Republican.
Hi, this is Colonel Dennis Freitas, U.S. Army retired, an American veteran. And Commissioner, Congressman Pierluisi, I've listened to a lot of your speeches on the House floor. Also, I have listened and also seen all your writings. Sir, I think you're a patriot of true grit. We American veterans salute you, because this is also a case of equality for Puerto Rico. And one of the problems, the fiscal debt is a problem, and internal action must be taken. But also the federal government must do its part. I was also with Governor Jeb Bush on Monday. I served on his transition team for American veterans. And his position on Puerto Rico for 35 years has been for statehood. And he also wants the fiscal problems to be taken care of. Lo uno no quita de lo otro. One does not take from the other. We can do both, because for 117 years, Puerto Rico has been oppressed. And it's time that we have freedom and equal U.S. citizenship, equal treatment under just laws. My question to you, sir, with a lot of respect and a lot of admiration, what can you see the federal government doing as the debt restructuring, the Jones Act? What steps can it's the duty of the federal government. What steps do you think they can take? And also supporting statehood, yes or no, for Puerto Rico?
Yes, Dennis, you are a true patriot, and I am proud of you. And I know you're currently residing in Florida, but you keep connected with Puerto Rico the same way the fellow Puerto Ricans in the mainland do. And you're right, as a veteran, I know you're fighting for equality, and that's the solution. It is the democratic thing to do. It is the right thing to do also economically and financially for Puerto Rico. Insofar as the immediate crisis is concerned, Congress could definitely give Puerto Rico a tool that is available in the States and that it's not available in Puerto Rico, and that is Chapter 9 of the Bankruptcy Code. It allows public entities to reorganize themselves under the protection of the bankruptcy court so that they can meet their payment obligations. It allows them to restructure in an orderly and legal way, and that's why I'm fighting for that in Congress. But the permanent solution would be to allow Puerto Rico to join the union on an equal footing. Pay federal taxes, but at the same time get the same benefits from the federal government, and definitely Puerto Rico would prosper with that kind of status. There would be a transition, but on a permanent basis, we would have a permanent status, no political risk, and we would thrive the same way that the states have thrived in the union.
We're going to get in one last call. It's Rick in Atlantic City, New Jersey, Democrat.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
The first thing I would like to pay homage and respect to the 65th Infantry Regime, the Bucaneers. They volunteered. They actually volunteer for wars from World War I on. These people are not mandatory to fight in our wars. They fight in our cause, so we have the same cause. That's number one. Number two, Mr. Pedro, I believe you're not going to be able to pay this debt. I believe your banks will collapse, and I believe Puerto Rico will become a science experiment. Are you prepared for this?
Yeah. Well, I do not agree with your assessment. I believe Puerto Rico has a bright future. On an immediate basis, we're facing a fiscal crisis, and we have, yes, a lot of debt. It basically amounts to the level of our economy, and that's high. But we can manage it. Definitely we can manage it. We can make sure that key entities for economic development, like the Power Authority and the Water and Sewer Authority are reorganized and meet their obligations, but do not keep raising rates, which would be terrible for our economic development. And at the same time, we can streamline our government, make sure that we live within our means. And Puerto Rico, as I said, has a lot of potential. Engineers, scientists, doctors from Puerto Rico are well known, world class. We have, that's the biggest resource we have, is the quality of our STEM professionals. And our beauty, our location is amazing. Our culture, we can do much better than we have. And we just need the U.S. government to treat us fairly, allow us to prosper, give us equality, and we will.
On the debt issue, Senators Schumer and Blumenthal are warning that if Puerto Rico defaults, it could trigger a humanitarian crisis if the territory is not allowed to restructure its debt. What do you mean by do you agree, and what sort of humanitarian crisis?
What they mean is that it would be chaotic if you do not have a legal structure to adjust your debts when need be. And they are referring to mass migration, more than we have. In the past, we've lost like 250,000 people in just 5 or 6 years. If it continues at this level, then Puerto Rico will be seriously downsized, even more so, and it's going to be very hard to make it viable. We want the American citizens who reside in Puerto Rico to stay there. Puerto Ricans, in their hearts, they'd rather live in Puerto Rico than anywhere in the States. They're not, because the economy is lagging. It's not working. The system is not working. That's why we need to change it. And that's what the senators were referring to. I hope that the Chapter 9 bill I introduced in the House and Senator Blumenthal and Schumer introduced in the Senate will get its day in Congress and will become law. It'll definitely help Puerto Rico.
All right, Pedro Pierluisi, thank you very much for your time this morning. Resident Commissioner of Puerto Rico, elected first in 2008, running for governor. Thank you. Appreciate the conversation. Coming up next, our Spotlight on Magazine.